Anne Boleyn had finally achieved what few women in history could even dream of. She had become Queen of England. Not by birth, but by fire. Yet the very fire that lifted her to the throne had begun to consume her from within. The court that had once buzzed with intrigue and whispers about the mysterious lady-in-waiting had now become a battlefield of quiet glances, plotting courtiers, and dangerous silence. Her coronation had been grand, her influence undeniable, but her power sat on a throne built of sand. She had promised Henry a son, a living, breathing heir who would secure the fragile Tudor line and justify the chaos of the past 7 years. But when Elizabeth was born, the court had feigned joy while the king masked his disappointment behind tight smiles and heavy silences. Still, Anne did not falter. She believed with unshakable faith that more children would come. She immersed herself in prayer, leaned on astrologers, consumed herbal remedies, and surrounded herself with midwives. But fate seemed to turn its face. 2 miscarriages followed, one of them believed to be a male child. Lost too soon, Henry began pulling away. At first it was subtle, less time together, shorter visits, more council meetings. Then came Jane Seymour, quiet and obedient, everything Anne was not. She was soft where Anne was sharp, modest where Anne was proud, and most importantly, she did not remind Henry of what he had lost in chasing his desire for a son. Anne felt it all unraveling. She was no fool. She had fought her way into the throne room with intellect and strategy, and now she could sense the walls closing in. The nobles who had once bowed to her now avoided her gaze. Her old allies fell silent, and her enemies grew bold. Thomas Cromwell, the king's trusted advisor, who had once helped Anne rise, began plotting her fall. Cromwell saw Anne as a political liability, a queen who divided more than united, who had no powerful family backing her, no alliances to offer. And Henry, once a man who wrote her poems, risked excommunication, and waged war against Rome, for her now seemed tired of her entirely. Their once passionate relationship had soured into public arguments, cold silences, and whispers in the corridors. Then came the rumors, wild, poisonous rumors, that Anne had seduced men at court, that she had shared inappropriate relations with her own brother, George Boleyn, that she dabbled in witchcraft, that she had cursed the king, that her seductions were unnatural. Absurd as they were, they served a purpose. They gave Henry an exit. On April 30th, 1536. Mark Smeaton, a court musician, was arrested and tortured until he confessed falsely to having an affair with the Queen. His confession opened the floodgates. Soon, 4 more men were arrested, including Anne's own brother. The charges were baseless, but the momentum was too strong. Anne was arrested on May 2nd, 1536, while watching a tennis match. She was taken to the Tower of London, the same fortress where she had once celebrated her coronation. She entered not as a queen, but as a prisoner. In the cold, damp walls of the tower, Anne waited, interrogated daily, knowing the trial was already decided. The evidence was laughable dates. She was proven to be elsewhere. Witnesses who never existed, but it didn't matter. Henry had made up his mind. She would be replaced. She would be erased. Her trial, held in the Great Hall of the Tower, was more of a performance than a proceeding. Anne, dressed in a simple black gown, stood tall, proud, and unwavering. Even as she was accused of treason, adultery, and incest, she denied every charge with clarity and dignity. The crowd watched in silence as she fought not just for her life but for her truth. But the verdict had already been written before the trial even began. She was found guilty. All 5 men were sentenced to death, beheaded by axe. Anne was sentenced to die by sword, a small mercy arranged by Henry from France. He didn't want her death to be messy. Just final dot, in the early hours of May 19th, 1536, Anne Boleyn woke up in the Queen's house at the Tower. She prayed. She took communion. She forgave her executioner. She even made light conversation with her ladies-in-waiting. Her courage was chilling and natural, almost divine. When she stepped out onto the scaffold, the sun had broken through the London fog. A crowd had gathered. Silence hung over them like mist. Anne stepped forward and spoke her final words. Not of vengeance or regret, but of submission. She praised the king. She prayed for England. She asked God to have mercy on her soul. Then, she knelt. The French swordsman, specially brought in for his precision, stood ready. In a swift, single motion so fast that Anne never saw it coming, her head was severed from her body, and just like that, the queen was gone. But Anne Boleyn's story did not end with the sword. In fact, it was just beginning. Her daughter, Elizabeth, would go on to defy every odd stacked against her. Declared illegitimate at birth, shuffled away from court, raised in uncertain shadows. Elizabeth absorbed her mother's strength, her brilliance, her political instinct. 2 decades later, she would rise not as a wife, not as someone's queen, but but as a queen in her own right. Queen Elizabeth I, the Virgin Queen, the last Tudor monarch, would rule England for 44 years. Under her reign, England would defeat the Spanish Armada, flourish in literature, expand its reach, and rise as a global power. Every time Elizabeth stood before her people, every time she outwitted the men who tried to control her, every time she chose power over marriage. She was carrying the spirit of the mother she never knew. Anne Boleyn's legacy was not buried with her body. It lived in the very fabric of England's golden age. It lived in the transformation of a religion, in the rebellion of women who refused silence. In the pen of Shakespeare, in the paintings of Elizabeth's royal portraits, history had tried to paint Anne as a temptress, a witch, a traitor. But she was none of those things. She was a woman who dared to want more, who refused to be anyone's mistress, who defied a king and shaped an empire. She lost her life, but not her voice.